So we'll be spotting SC manager Chris Hardy with a review of the 23-24 season. Just kind of going over bits and pieces of going from pre-season to the end of the season. A few things that happened over the last summer. We won the league at Benfield and Tallow and Redcar. So obviously we started, in about June. I think it was a thing we all knew leading up the season that Amy was going to be leaving the club, the physio. So I know you replaced her with Jimmy. How was it to be able to replace someone who's been around Amy as part of the furniture of the club, who was good in the dressing room, good with the lads? How did you find that replacement with Jimmy?
I think the first and foremost to find good physios is very, very difficult. And as you so rightly said, Amy was she was pretty much sort of part of the furniture, and she was really good with the guys. She was clearly very talented in what she did. She did it as a profession. So the task was difficult, and we were recommended Jimmy through a third party, and the timing was good. The alignment was right, and Jimmy's come in and Jimmy's settled in really well. He's good with the guys. He clearly knows his stuff. So for a position I thought was going to be very difficult to fill, we seemed to do it fairly effortlessly, really. And Jimmy continues to be in position, which is always a testament to what he's done previously. So yeah, like I say, pleased that Jimmy's come on board, and pleased that I didn't have the task of trying to find somebody to replace some big boots to fill.
Obviously, we had a few outgoings probably last summer. I think the big one would probably be Nick Liversedge, who was number one for a very long time, very important player for survival, and was a key part of the team until Ryan came in about January time. Was it replacing Nick like a hard decision when he was to eventually let him go for the club?
I think Nick was very popular with the fans. I think for a struggling football team that it was, Nick was getting a lot of plaudits in around his goalkeeping ability. But I knew once I'd put a stamp on it and the direction I wanted to go with the football team, I knew that Ryan was the right fit. He was maybe one of two of the goalkeepers I was considering. But like you say, getting Ryan, and I think Ryan being in position and seeing what Ryan can do with the ball at his feet, ultimately he's like an additional player. It took a little bit of time, I think, for fans to warm to Ryan, given the relationship they had with Nick. But his feet do the talking, albeit sometimes his mouth does the talking as well. Yeah. But no, on a serious note, Ryan's a top goalkeeper, and he does everything that we want him to do there.
Obviously, there was a lot more departures with James Fairley, Matty Wees, Dale Hobson, Kieran Banks, who eventually left to join title rival Shildon, and Josh Elcourt, or I don't know if I said his name right there. With them leaving, obviously, additionally, Cal Patton and Wayne Winfield did leave over the end of pre-season at the start of the season. Was it losing? We lost a good chunk of players. I know Matty probably played every game, if not most. Same with James. I know James, towards the second half of the season, dropped out when the formation was changed. And Dale, who obviously you brought in about the January time. How was it, letting players that go that you brought in to challenge and then to try and replace them with other qualities?
Yeah, I think what you've got to be mindful of is that, as much as we had a good season, we didn't achieve what I wanted us to achieve. So we had to try and improve the group. On the back of improving the group, there was people that were going to be surplus. Good players, good servants to the football club. But at this point, we're on a progression. We're on a development path, and with that in mind, we needed to bring better than what we had at the football club. And our signings, I think, spoke for themselves, so to speak. But yeah, it was, from where we were to that interim period to where we ended up, it was a necessary part of the development.
Obviously, I'll go over a few of the signings now. Initially, JJ was the first signing of the season. Then Rio, who's dropped down 2 divisions to come to the club, as well as Hendel, who was born on the same day. All players who can play higher, and as shown with 2 of them still here at the club now, will play higher this season. How was it attracting them type of three players to the club initially?
Well, I think when I first came to the football club, it was very difficult to get players to come to the football club because, you know, the history it supported probably underperformances. You know, so the season that we had prior to these guys coming in, I think people were starting to see the potential. People were starting to, you know, match up a team that can win games of football with a facility that's probably the best in the area. And then all of a sudden, if you put them two together, then you've got an attractive proposition. And for people like Rio, JJ, Hendo, the players that you've mentioned, you know, it was clearly an exciting, you know, project, idea of coming to the football club, and for them reasons, these guys have signed up.
Obviously, next one through the door was actually John Howard. I know John's gone on to move up to Smitty Moore, but John being a young player, it looked like the type of profile that you're targeting, being early 20s, no real kind of injuries. Was it getting John in the way he ended up performing for the club? Was it a bit of a surprise for you, or did you know that was going to happen from John?
If I sit here now and say that I knew John was going to rip it up last year, I'd be lying. I think John had real good qualities. You know, he's got soft feet, he can tackle, he can head, he's got a range of passing. All this we knew, but equally we knew that maybe he had a little bit of a temperament as well, and we had to get him bedded in, and we had to get him, you know, in line with what we were trying to do. And John went on to do that and more. John was a top player for us, and John is a top player, and he deserves his move. But yeah, like you say, John he proved to be a very, very good signing for us.
Obviously, we'll go over the last three signings together. Obviously, Adam Lincoln, who came in as number 2, he did play a handful of games. Charlie Watt as well, who dropped down from Spinning after being at Carlisle as well before that. And Kieran Parnaby, who I think was just kind of, from when he played, it was just kind of another member of the squad. Was it them three important squad players to have around the place, especially with Adam and Kieran, as well as Charlie as well?
Yeah, I mean, you're not, never in football you're in a position to put the same 11 players out week in, week out. So you've got to have a squad. These guys contributed. Massively. You know, it is a squad game, and without, you know, their help, without their services, then it would have made things a damn sight, you know, harder. Thinking of one example, we've travelled to Wickham on a Tuesday night. Never the easiest place to go. You know, so young Ryan's picked up an injury that he couldn't shake. We hoped that he would shake it on the evening. He didn't do that. Adam had to step in on the 11th hour, and Adam's played his part in a winning performance. So again, in terms of the squad, we need a squad. And if these guys can contribute, which they certainly did, all of the guys that you've mentioned, then that just, you know, it supports the need for that, you know, 16 plus players.
Obviously, I know when it comes to winning the league, it's trying to wheel up a winning mentality. Last pre-season it probably showed with wins over Birmingham Town, the reserves, Bowers 23s being a professional setup, Mask again, who were 2 divisions higher at the time, and Hebben, who were a division above, went on to win the league. And obviously defeat the Whitby. But how did you see last pre-season going? Was it good getting the win atmosphere around the group?
Yeah, it wasn't. It probably wasn't just that. It was the fashion that we won our games. You know, we played the way that I wanted us to play. You know, dominant, albeit there were narrow victories. Fairly dominant in games. You know, controlling the ball, creating chances. So there was a lot more pleasing elements to these friendlies than just winning the actual games.
Obviously, I know when we started the season, you'd probably agree with me that the first 2 games weren't the best, with draws to Crook and Seaham. How did you feel? Both come from behind eventually, they come back in them games to draw. How do you look back at them games now?
I mean, the Crook game was a derby game. Red Hot Day, typical opener. You know, I always say regarding an opener, as long as you don't get beat, that's a good start to the season. You know, I think Crook on the day found some real energy. I think we huffed and puffed. And a draw was probably a fair result, you know, all said and done. So again, disappointment, maybe we didn't take all 3 points, but it was what it was. And like I say, we just needed to to get past that and get into the next one.
Obviously, then we did probably kickstart. Best way to say it is kickstart that season with the win over Brilliant in the FA Cup, and then beating Benfield 7-1 here on the Tuesday. Was it kind of? Do you think that probably relaxed the nerves of supporters who watched the first two games and maybe were a bit worried with how the season started, thinking, "Oh no, what's going to happen here?"
Yeah, I mean, for people to be worried after 2 games is probably a little bit premature, and that was probably proved over the course of the season. But obviously, fans want to win games of football.
Yeah.
Management do, players do, but equally, opposition teams do as well. And on the 2 occasions against Crook and Seaham, we probably weren't good enough on the day and on the evening to take all 3 points. But it was a start where we didn't suffer a defeat. It was a start where we had points on the board. So it was a building block, albeit not the building block that we wanted.
Obviously, we started to probably then go on a bit of a run of form with wins over Borough Rangers, Gisborough Town, Seaham, who beat 7-0 in the FA Cup, which is, depends how you look at it. I know we went out to 9 men, win 7-0. Don't know how you can look at that. And then eventually beating Whitley Bay 5-1 with missing key players from what I can see. How did that kind of run after the FA Cup in the first couple of games? How did you look at them, that kind of run?
The pleasing part to it was the fact that for the first couple of games we huffed and puffed, but then pretty sure when we got into game 3, we were dominant in everything that we did. We controlled the games from start to finish, more often than not. 70-30 on possession stats, lots of chances created. So we'd sort of put a marker down that was, get on the ball, stay on the ball, dominate the game, and the result naturally falls in on the back of it, and that proved to be the case.
Obviously, then we went into the first qualifying round in the FA Cup after winning the 2 previous ties, getting West Auckland, a bit ironically, but drawing 0-0 with them on the Saturday and then beating them 2-1 in the replay on the Tuesday down to 10 men. How did you kind of look at them 2 games, and both being derbies in a short period of time?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we've drawn West in the FA Cup this year, it's always a difficult game, and I thought we were good down here. I thought we probably deserved more from the game. And then we showed some real character up at their place. But yeah, it was pleasing because that type of game is a 50-50 game and it can go either way. As I say, I thought we did enough to win the game at home, went for the replay, and we managed to get over the finish line.
Obviously then we went on to South Shields in the FA Cup. And I'd probably say we matched them for about 70 minutes, then fitness took over, scored a absolute brilliant free kick. Then I think Danny got sent off and then scored a penalty. It's just these kind of little margins at the time when we played an opposition 3-4 leagues above who were doing well at the time as well. How did you kind of look at that game?
I think we were in the game probably for longer than 70 minutes. I think we were in the game for maybe 80 minutes, but at some point you had to expect that the quality was going to tell. But up until that time, which was late in the game, I think we give a really good account of ourselves. I think we matched them in pretty much every department. I did say to the boys at the time, when opportunities present themselves, we're going to have to take it. And we had a few opportunities and we didn't take it. And then sure enough, come the back end of the game, their little bit of quality told. But the guys did a really good shift, and like you say, could be really proud of their efforts.
Obviously, then we travelled down to Leeds to face Yorkshire during the FA Vals, which we ended up winning 5-0. And then on the Tuesday, we beat Berkeley 4-1, the team we've entered since fourth. But I remember at the time a lot of Berkeley fans saying that's the best they've seen a team turn up to their ground and play in the opening 15-20 minutes. We were, I think, 3-4 up at the time.
Yeah, that first 45 is arguably as good as we've played all season. We were fluent. We were decisive. We were clinical. And there was comments that were flying about, from people that have been around the game, that's the best Northern League side that these people have seen. But we looked that way on the evening. Like you say, we'd done enough in the first 45 to win the game, which proved to be the case. But them first 45 minutes were exceptional.
Obviously, then we on the Saturday we faced Heaton Stanton, who eventually got promoted with us, going away to them and losing 2-1. How do you look back on that? Because I know on the day it was quite a difficult surface, which it always probably is. How do you kind of look back at that game?
I think going to Heaton, you know that it's a difficult fixture. Obviously, you mentioned the surface there. It's a bit of a leveller. I don't think we played particularly well on the day. And I think if you're not playing particularly well against a team that'll, harry and battle and work for each other like Heaton do, then you're at risk. And as it turned out, we were at risk.
Obviously, they've run a run of 9 games and only conceded 3, and we had, I think, about 6 clean sheets in a row, including key wins. Probably 4-0 away to West Auckland, 6-0 over Penrith here, 12-0 versus Towler here, which depends how you look at it, because I know at the time we were struggling very badly. How do you kind of look back at that with some of the standout scorelines that I mentioned?
We just had a swagger about us, didn't we? Like you say, you remember the games well, just like I do. Totally dominant, scoring goals, free-flowing. Just like you say, we had a real aura about us that was probably better than the level, truth be told. But just grinding results out, keeping clean sheets, scoring plenty of goals. It was a good period.
I know obviously during that period of time you did bring in a number of players, being Shabs, Liam Cook, Dom Curl and Aaron Brown over, I think it was about a 3-week period they all came in.
Yeah.
I know obviously Shabs, Aaron and Cookie, but obviously all played a part, and I know Dom left probably a couple of months later just with unable to break in the team. How do you look back at them 4 signings?
Yeah, I think pivotal really. I mean, Aaron coming in, he gave us some real leadership and experience in a centre half position. Shabs, he played his part. He played a massive part. Shildon away, Boxing Day, huge part. And Cookie was versatile and probably was a squad player, but equally, as we said earlier in the interview, we need the squad players. So they all played the part, and I think unfortunate for Dom, he was on the back of a bad injury. He wasn't match fit. We were in stride. The timing wasn't right for that one to work out.
Obviously then went into the Durham Challenge Cup, because I know that time we had a lot of games called off with weather and pitches. I think it's unfortunate that we didn't actually have many games at home over that period, because I think it probably would have been a lot more. But over that time, we played, I think, from about November to December, we played about 5 games. Obviously, Durham Challenge Cup versus Aycliffe, which I think if you look, depending how you look at it, I know obviously we had the FA Vars on the Saturday, which eventually got called off. We played, I'd probably say, a lot of squad players, would you say, that day, with a few of the lads from South Shields in as well? Yeah,
there was massive rotation. We engaged on the international graduates with South Shields. We brought Maurizio and Quack in for the game, so they were brand new to the environment. We rotated the squad considerably, but still had enough quality on the field on the evening to be able to do something against as it was struggling Newton Aycliffe side. But it wasn't to be. Like you say, it was a very difficult surface. We didn't play particularly good football. We didn't deal with the conditions as well as what we should have done. And I think Aycliffe were worthy winners on the evening.
Obviously, I did mention the Blythetown game, which eventually came, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, it ended up happening here. Going out on penalties in the Vars, how do you kind of look back at it? Is it a bit of a frustration how the game went? Because it seemed, from memory, it was very one-sided after a lone goal in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I've been asked this question many times. I think if there was a law for a lot of the fans, players, and myself, it was that game. The game brought lots of promise. I think maybe some areas probably got a bit ahead of themselves in terms of thinking we could go far, but ultimately it was cup football, and conceding a goal early doors was obviously something that we needed a response from. We got the response, but we were just unable to get the ball over the line to see the result out in the 90 minutes after being dominant. It's funny because we've obviously played Blyth in a pre-season friendly, and we've beat them in a pre-season friendly. But I actually said at the time we were a lot more dominant in the game when we got beat as opposed to when we won, in the pre-season friendly. So I think over 10 games we win 8 of them, we draw 1 and we lose 1, and unfortunately on that particular day it was the one that we lost.
Obviously, we haven't faced Shildon on Boxing Day, which I haven't mentioned too, but obviously Shab's getting a hat-trick, and then it can just end up being a bit of a show of where we were at the time. and how it would end up eventually being just a dominant performance over a title rival. How did you look at that game, especially with it being a Boxing Day, big clash, big crowd?
I actually thought the game was tighter than the scoreline, but I think what it did, it sent a really strong message to everybody in the league. I think at that point, people started looking at us and going, these are the real deal. We certainly did enough to win the game, but I don't think the scoreline resembled the game for what it was. It was evenly contested, and the big moments that felt to us, we took them, and we were clinical on the back of it.
Obviously, we started 2024 with a 2-2 draw against Gisborne after going 2-0 down and come back to Aaron Brown. I think that was the time when he came off the bench and that sent him in the team when he scored a late equaliser. How did you look at that start of the year? Because I know we had a similar draw to them last season.
Yeah, Gisborne seemed to have our number. I thought Gisborne were very, very lively. I think they were prepped very well to try and counteract what we were doing. If I remember rightly, Ryan got his pockets picked on the D, which obviously wasn't good for us. But again, we'd settled into it and we showed good character to get the point from the game in what I believe was probably one of our toughest games at HP for the season.
Obviously, I know you have mentioned the Wickham game going on the Tuesday night away there when Ryan dropped out and Adam came in. Was that kind of a bit of, it showed the lads how deep the squad actually was? Because I know everyone knows how good Ryan is on the ball. But also, I think it was probably the first time any of us had really seen Adam play. I know he played in a couple League Cup and Durham Challenge Cup games, but it was the first time we probably saw Adam in a level where if he would ever be called on, we know we could rely on him.
I mean, it was a big game, wasn't it? And like I say, what we were looking for is, I think when you look at the fixtures, you earmark teams like Wickham and Heaton Stan away from home that are difficult. West Allotment, difficult, and obviously what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that you don't get beat. You're trying to make sure that you can maximise your return. So for us to have our goalkeeper missing, our first choice goalkeeper missing on the evening, that was a bit of a blow. And like you say, fair play to Adam. He's stepped up, stepped in, and he's delivered a performance.
Obviously now then we're on a bit of a run of beating Berkeley, Redcar, who just brought in Carl Jarrett and a number of lads from Mask at the time, and then Northallerton away, obviously on a difficult surface on the day, as well as 2-1 wins over West Auckland and a 3-0 battering of Heaton Stanton here. How did you look back at that kind of run of games?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, there's games there. I think the Redcar game down here, I think we were 3-0 up, approaching half time, and we've give a soft goal away, which has sort of let them back in. They had a little bit of a go second half, but for the first 45 minutes, I think it was a bit of a football lesson that we delivered. But then, as I say, we just left the door slightly ajar. Other games, Northallerton away, that was a difficult surface, and the goals didn't come immediately, so we needed to be patient on the back of it. But again, we've eventually got what we needed in the form of goals and the result to boot. So yeah, it was a difficult period, but equally a productive period for us.
Obviously as well, we then eventually drew the West Lotman Celtic on a Saturday away, which I think, looking back, it kind of had a bit of controversy with a controversial penalty for us, controversial penalty for them, like opposite ends of the game. How would you look at that game? Because I know it was a game where a bit like Blythe, where we absolutely hammered their goal, but they did have spells of where they looked very dangerous.
Yeah, it was a game of, it was an awful game of football. The pitch was difficult, to say the least. I think the pitch contributed to lots of transition. It contributed to lots of back and forth, whether it be West attacking us or us attacking them. There was some moments that I think eventually levelled themselves out. And I think, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, West Allotment is a place that is difficult to go. Yeah. And if you can avoid defeat, then at the beginning of the season, you're fairly happy with that. But I think the run of form that we were on, clearly we're looking to take all 3 points. But in reality, given the circumstances, a point probably wasn't a bad point.
Obviously, we faced 3 teams, but in 4 games against teams who were lower down the table. 2 versus North Shields, Sunderland, Darcy and Penrith. I know Penrith, always a weird one, when you go away to them, because especially with the new Astro they've just had laid, you never know how. Actually, no. What was Penrith game at home? I can't remember.
I think we beat them 6-0 or something.
Yeah. So yeah, played Penrith, and obviously beat RCA's up. But that kind of run straight after the West Auckland Celtic game, was it kind of good to get some, bit back just to bounce back and get wins?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Like you say, the Penrith game, it was never going to be a leveller because of the surface. The surface obviously suited us, and we made full use of it. And then, like you say, we marched on the back of it. Confidence was high. Opposition probably wasn't the top end of the league, and we made full use of it.
Obviously, then we play Shildon on Easter Monday here. Eventually, losing 3-1 in a difficult day, and I generally think on another day that game probably doesn't happen with how the weather was, because I remember being on the pitch with Liam Henderson at half time, and there was puddles all over the place. How would you look back at that game?
I think it was a game that kept the title race alive. I think if we'd have won the game, then I think it'd have been probably dead and buried then. So from a neutral's point of view, from a Shildon's point of view, it was a good result, for them particular groups. For us, it was, I don't know, maybe we just missed the trick that day. We didn't seem to get up for the battle. I think in the end it looked like Shildon probably wanted it more, albeit they didn't want it more, but they were just maybe a little bit quicker and a little bit smarter in playing the conditions, given the fact that they were difficult. They were probably as difficult as what we've seen out at HP, and they were probably just, like you say, a little bit more streetwise, a bit more game savvy to navigate the result.
Obviously, the week after we were supposed to play Towel away, but I remember the game got called off quite early in the morning, and Gisborough actually went and beat Shildon on the day. Ironically, I think both goals by the player we've signed this season, Jordan.
Yeah.
For that, when we weren't playing and knowing that result came in and they'd won, is it kind of, did it bring a bit of like, oh, right, there's a little less pressure because they weren't, I think if they'd won they would have went top of the league and a couple of points clear. Is it just kind of a bit of relief and go, okay, we can just go on the games and not need to win?
It was hard at that point, before the Gisborough game with Shildon, to work out who was favourite. But as soon as Gisborough did us the favour that they did, in the fashion that they did, then I think it firmly swung back to ourselves. But if Gisborough had won that day, and with us not playing, the league would have looked different, albeit we had games in hand. It would have looked very different, and maybe that shift of pressure, maybe it might have told, but it wasn't the case, and Gisborough did us a favour, and I don't think we look back on with that in mind.
Obviously, then we went to play Wickham at home. I think we won 3-2. I think we were 2-0 up at half time, and then Dave scored 2 quick goals, and we got a third just after through JJ. And then obviously Crook, which was a tightly contested game. Gotti stepped up, scored a free kick, and Carlisle away, which I don't know how you felt on the day of Carlisle, but I think when we took the lead quite early on, there seemed to be this bit of a party atmosphere, especially by the fans. It made it feel a bit of a feel-good atmosphere on the day. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, obviously, you want to be sure of the result before you start, getting overexcited, and fans are entitled to do that. But from a management point of view, it was staying focused. It was getting the result over the line. It's a difficult place to go to. We've had some difficult experiences down there, but I think we brushed them aside quite comfortably on the day.
Obviously, then on the Monday, which I think from the Crook game to the last game of the season, I think we probably played five games in about 10 days. Obviously, on the Monday night, we played Benfield, and in convincing fashion, we absolutely tore them apart, winning 7-1, win the title. How did that night feel after all the months and probably years of hard work?
Yeah, it felt you always have a niggling doubt that, football being as complex as what it is, that maybe the result won't go your way, and it goes into Thursday night with Redcar, which was always going to be a difficult game for us. So we were focused. I think again we made real easy work of it. Like in the end it was arguably men against boys. We showed real quality. We scored plenty of goals. So to get the victory under our belts and get the title sewn up, so to speak, was a massive relief, really.
Obviously then, I think you mentioned the Redcar game, won the 4-0 when we got the title, and 3-0 versus Towel on Saturday. How did it feel to get that? Was it 100 points, 100 more goal difference, and 100 14-ish scored.
Yeah, I mean, the Redcar game, again, it just looked like two teams at two different levels. We were dominant from start to finish for a fixture that promised to be a lot more competitive than what it actually was. We played them off the park, worthy winners, and like I said, on the evening we got presented with the trophy, which again was a great experience. And then going into the last game of the season, it's probably a little bit more difficult than maybe is what we thought it would be, given the fact that Tower Lord, in some instances, has been whipping boys, and we put 12 past them in our previous game. But they put up a good fight, and they made it difficult for us. And eventually, we managed to grind them down and get the result that we needed, which got us our points tally, which we were after, which was all important. The goals were the goals. We scored goals for fun. So the goal difference was very, very positive overall. I think we scored 167 goals throughout the whole of the season. So the efforts were remarkable, really.
All right, cheers, Chris. Thank you for the whole interview. And obviously, we'll now look forward onto the 24-25 season. A lot of new places to go. I don't know if you've been to many of the grounds before, but it's kind of a new league, a bit of an unknown for ourselves. Big change in the squad. How do you feel next season's going? Just in a little short minute or so.
I think, like you said, it's different. There's a lot of familiarity in around the Northern League. Clearly there's been a number of players left the football club for various reasons. There's a number of players came into the football club. So there's going to be that bedding in period. I think we've recruited well. There's still, recruitment that needs to be done. It may not be done before the start of the season. It may be done early part of the season, but nevertheless, it needs to be done. But we'll go into the season, with an ethos that stays in place as to what it was previously. We'll look to make full advantage of our home advantage. As you said, there's a few grounds I haven't been to previously. There's a few grounds I have been to. So there'll be a fair amount of unknown, but I expect the league to be competitive. I expect, if you're talking about the top 4 sides in the Northern League, I think the top 12 sides will probably be the equivalent of that in the next league. So it's a tougher fixture week in, week out. It's one that we need to be, prepped for and ready for. And it's one that we need to find some confidence in, winning games of football, and try to, like you say, put a run together.
All right, cheers, Chris. Thank you.
All right.